Hello class, welcome to this lesson on basic calculator operations. The first thing I want to tell you before we start is that in this class I will be asking you to format your notes in the Cornell Notes style. That means there is an area on the left hand side for you to make questions, and there is an area on the bottom for you to write a very short summary. So you might as well get used to that now. So basic calculator operations. There are basically two things I want to tell you. Two things. First thing, how to use scientific notation. And the second thing is how to punch in numbers. Okay, for some of you, especially some of you who've taken AP Chemistry, this is probably going to be pretty simple. But for others, I just want to do a quick refresher course because we will be using our calculator a lot. We will be using scientific notation a lot, and we will be obviously dividing and multiplying a lot of different things on these calculators. So if you have the basics down in your calculator, then you will have it. So I have a calculator here. This is the Texas Instrument 30XA. This is probably the most common calculator I have in my class. It's the one I use the most. And the first thing you need to know is scientific notation. So scientific notation, if you have not learned about this, I need you to watch the Khan Academy video on it. But just to do a very, very quick overview, we have very, very large numbers in physics. For example, this number is the speed of light, 300,000 meters per second. We don't want to type that number in our calculator though, because this number is very, very big. And if we type this into our calculator, we are likely to make mistakes. Did I type in 7 zeros? Did I type in 8 zeros? Did I type in 9 zeros? Did I mess that up along the way? And also, there's going to be some numbers that we can't even type into our calculator because there's just too many zeros on either the front end or the back end. So let's just make this simple and call this 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. That's much easier to punch into our calculator. It causes less mistakes, and it's accurate. So in our calculator, all scientific calculators have an exponent button. All calculators have an exponent button. If you're using any Texas Instrument model calculator, they use the button EE. So if you can see this button right here, it says EE. Okay, I do apologize about the light. I'm not sure if you can see this properly, but it is kind of hard to get this right with the paper and whatnot. So on this model right here, also a very common model, the EE button is right here. The EE button is right here, but it's in blue, so you have to push second EE to get there. So if we take that number that I just wrote down, 3 times 10 to the 8th, you do not type in times 10. I'm going to write that down. You do not type in times 10, meaning you do not push the multiplication button followed by the 1 button and the 0 button. Do not type in times 10. When using scientific notation, you are going to use that EE button. That means times 10. So instead of putting 3 times 10 to the 8th, you're just going to put 3 EE 8. Or on this one over here, 3, you have to use the second button first, second EE 8. So these are the same thing. Those numbers on your calculator right there mean 3 times 10 to the 8th. There are also a few different calculators you might be using. Here is a Sharp calculator and also a Casio. Sharp and Casio both use the EXP button. EXP is right here, or EXP is right here. So if you use a Sharp or a Casio, same thing. 3 EXP 8, 3 EXP 8. You do not type in times 10. I'm going to say that again. You do not type in times 10. And lastly, the other common model is a Casio. Casio does really make it kind of easy because on their calculator, they literally have a times 10 to the X button. So you would type in 3 times 10 to the 8th. So whenever you're using scientific notation, do not type in times 10. Okay? I do not have any graphing calculators with me today, but graphing calculators work the same way. Don't type in times 10. Most all graphing calculators are Texas Instruments, and they also have the E button on there. Now, that's half our lesson, scientific notation. and how to type it into the calculator. Main lesson, do not type in times 10. That means do not type in x times 1 and 0. Use the EE button, the EXP button, or the times 10 button. Now we are going to do a very quick formula on how to solve things in your calculator. I'm going to give you an equation. R equals mv b over e capital B. This is the radius. What is the radius of a charge? I'm going to put a little charge here, a little plus sign, moving in a magnetic field. Okay? So we're going to assume this charge is moving in a magnetic field and it's moving in a circle. Once again, you don't need to know this right away. This is something that we are going to cover later. Right now, I'm more interested in the formula and how to punch in the numbers. So let's look at these numbers here. When we are dealing with these small numbers, the mass of a proton is going to be, so we're going to have R equals 1.67 times 10 to the negative 27th. The velocity in this particular problem is going to be 6.3 times 10 to the 5th. Oh, I forgot to put my units there. Kilograms. On the bottom, the charge on the electron is going to be 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19th. And the magnetic field, which is B, is going to be 0.10 Teslas. Now, I want to point this out again. You do not need to know what this equation is yet. This is something that we will cover later. I will go over all these variables in class and what these mean. Right now, I'm just concerned that you can punch these numbers into your calculator and get an answer. And when I talk about this, I would like you to look at one thing. If you have more than one number, so there's two numbers under the divided by sign here. When you have more than one number under the divided by sign, you need to divide each of those. You need to divide each of those. Because the problem is, most people look at this and they think, oh, I take this times this, and I divide by this times that. Because that's how we see it on the page. But in a calculator, you have to divide by each. So let me do this on my calculator, and maybe you'll understand what I'm talking about. So here we go. This calculator is not showing up very well on the screen. I'm going to try a different one. Okay. 1.67 times 10 to the negative 27th times 6.3 times 10 to the 5th divided by 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19th. And this is where most people will type in times again because it's times 0.10, right? But because both numbers are on the bottom of the line, you need to divide by each. So we did divided by 1.6 times 10 to the negative 19th, and we're going to go divided by 0.10. Our answer is 0.065 meters, and that is the correct answer. So to recap that again, if you're ever using your calculator and using scientific notation, which we will a lot, don't type in times 10. And if you ever are dividing or multiplying any numbers in a big string of numbers, like this is kind of a big string of numbers here, and there's more than one number on the bottom of the divided by sign, you need to divide by each number separately. Don't push in times. Thank you.